Today for Devotions with Daniela, we are reading White Women Get Ready, How Healing Post-Traumatic Mistress Syndrome Leads to Anti-Racist Change. This book I'm reading on for my own practice. If you are interested in reading along with me, you can get copies here. This is The Forgetting of Feminism. The history of race is certainly about the control of bodies, but it is also about the control of minds. Much more successful than childhood corporal punishment were purple princess tutus, Sunday school promises of heaven, chore sticker charts, and A+. Throughout the course of my lifetime, these wicked webs did not need witch hunts or enslavements or anti-miscegenation laws. All they needed was for me and my mistress syndrome to perform as was pre-programmed. That's not to say that violence hasn't been used at times to keep me in line. It has. But in the aftermath of my few and relatively limited encounters with physical and sexualized violence, I was not incited to overthrow the tables of whiteness. If anything, I doubled down on good little white girl / nice white lady in order to keep myself safe. When #MeToo began to appear in the social media spaces I frequented, it took me a couple days to post anything, even though I had long accepted that I, too, had had some of those experiences. As I read the wave of #MeToo posts pouring into my feeds, I felt a sense of power and then overwhelm and confusion. I both wanted and didn't want to be part of the collective experience. I wondered if my experiences were serious enough to merit a public post, and if, as a white woman, I would be appropriating #MeToo's intent. #MeToo is a social movement that was started in 2006 by Tarana Burke to create solidarity and empathy among young Black women and girls as survivors of sexual assault. Originally intended by Burke as a way to build empowerment through empathy among some of the most marginalized, #MeToo went viral as well-known celebrities went public to call out sexual violence, beginning with Alyssa Milano in 2017. While not diminishing the very real impact of those celebrities' #MeToo experiences, or mine, it's worth considering how race, class, and gender can shape our experiences of sexual violence and our capacity to respond to it. It's worth considering how white feminist movements have missed these intersections and thus been ineffective at untying the double knot. In general, white feminist strategies have tragically misunderstood how sexism is impacted by whiteness and transphobia, classism, etc. As I will continue to discuss, white feminism has historically tried to mitigate the impacts of sexism by leveraging racism. Ironically, tightening the wicked web's racist double knot makes it more difficult for us to untie its initial one. Our historical ignorance has us reinforcing the sexism we say we are against. At the very least, foregoing intersectional sexism has made us exclusionary and thus ineffective. In excluding those closest to the problems, we are also excluding those closest to the solutions. One recent memorable example of white feminist exclusion was how, in the wake of 45's election, white women all over the U.S. zealously began crocheting pink pussy hats without considering that not all people with pussies have pink ones. These criticisms of feminism may be difficult to hear. They might initiate feelings of the 4Ds. While I had early exposure to Black feminist and womanist thinkers, I also found deep resonance with the writings I read after college by white feminists of the 80s and 90s. The words of Sue Monk Kidd and Rianne Eisler gave me the courage and information to begin challenging the patriarchal Christian traditions in which I was raised. They described feelings I had felt deep in my body and spirit, but had not known how to name. My intention is to move into these discussions of white feminism, holding the both and. We can both respect those who have come before us and be critical of them. We can recognize the efforts of our movement elders while also acknowledging the ways the wicked webs limited their perspectives, strategies, and lives. We can work to get more and more specific about how these wicked webs function and stay in place, and we can get specific about our roles in it. In not being nuanced about race, one thing white feminism has missed is how the existence of modern white womanhood relies on a careful psychological cocktail of shiny rewards and looming threats. While white womanhood grants us an exclusive promise of safety, of progress, of ultimate and indefinite security. And while there are real, tangible advantages, economic, physical, psychological, emotional, to white womanhood, those are only advantages in comparison to the fatal disadvantages of non-white womanhood. Without the threat of non-white womanhood, would we be so committed to its costs? The somber reality is that white women have sold out our bodies, minds, and souls in order to play the game of imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. Our legitimacy depends on delegitimizing others. Just as beauty, brains, and charm can constitute the holy trinity of white women winning, so too must ugliness, stupidity, and immorality prop up its contrast. The sleeping princess needs a wicked witch, the innocent daughter an evil stepmother. These white feminist ideals exist only because of the dehumanization and violence done to Black, Indigenous, and other women of color and their bodies, and that is something to mourn. Modern gynecology and white feminism's pro-choice arm are elbow deep in Black women's blood. I have a personal connection to professional obstetrics. My grandfather left his Amish Mennonite agricultural inheritance to practice medicine in Appalachia, and several in my mother's generation followed in practicing medicine. So I come to this history having generally profited from the profession, a legacy with secrets and practitioners about which and whom I am just beginning to learn. Perhaps most notorious in this bloody history is James Marion Sims, the father of modern gynecology, who performed torturous procedures and surgeries throughout the 1800s on enslaved Black women without anesthesia and operated under the racist notion that Black people did not feel pain, even though there are many reports of how much pain these women were in and how much they were screaming. Many patients died as a result. We only know the names of 3 of his patients, Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy. Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy, among many unnamed others, are the reasons we have gynecology today. This grotesque history didn't end with slavery. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood and early 20th century champion of birth control, had deep roots in the eugenics movement, which supported the forced sterilization of people the movement deemed unfit to reproduce, including people with disabilities and people of color. Not to be confused with Margaret Sanger, who you hear me talking about, who is a cult scholar. Sometimes we white women forget this history. We forget that the construction of our womanhood and motherhood has been, from its foundation, a racialized arrangement. We forget there is no universal womanhood, and yet we try to organize our movements in ways that erase the distinct and critical differences in our relationships to gender due to race. Sometimes we white women forget how our racialized history has harmed us. We forget that a pedestal restricts our expression and movement. We forget that a pedestal is not really a safe or a liberatory place to be. We forget that we have been put there as a rallying cry for systems of oppression. We forget, or maybe we've never actually understood, that the pedestal is the problem, and that in dismantling it, we will at times feel like we're falling, even though as humans we have the capacity to survive such falls and to collectively thrive.